Now, the economic freedom fighters has also expressed concern over Morocco being readmitted back into the African Union. The EFF says it believes the readmission of Morocco into the continental bloc is an immense contradiction of Africa's rejection on colonialism. EFF National spokesperson Mbuyiseni Ndlozi now joins us in studio for more. Very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you so much for joining us. Would you say that the decision by the AU to readmit Morocco in is perhaps a betrayal of the people of Western Sahara?
Yes, not only that, it's actually a betrayal of what the AU itself stands for. Remember that the very values that constitute African unity is the values of decolonization, that the founding fathers were fighting against colonization that existed in the continent, believed in. So your association with people who disrespect and disregard other people's rights to self-determination should be seen as a contradiction to your own values. And of course, it's a betrayal to the people of Western Sahara and to Polisario. So in effect, it has rendered the African Union reactionary.
In saying that, is it not perhaps a better idea to have Morocco back into the AU where these issues can be resolved and be talked about between Morocco and the African Union?
No, it's like thinking or hoping that you could participate in the liberation of the people of Palestine by having dinner and tea with Israel. It's not a conversation that should be negotiable. People's right to self-determination should not be a negotiation. The people of Western Sahara have a right. They shouldn't negotiate. They shouldn't sit over a table to negotiate their right to exist and their right to form a sovereign state. And so, historically, boycotts, divestments, and sanctions has been the most efficient way to get decolonization to happen. So the isolation of Morocco, what you would have expected the African Union to do was to mount its isolation of Morocco in the continent, not war, and that's the most peaceful way to resolve conflicts like that these days, is to internationally isolate them in terms of not only political and diplomatic relations, but economic, sports, intellectual, and everything else. Isolate them until they institute a referendum without the Moroccan people in Western Sahara.
Will that not prolong the issues within the Western Sahara and Morocco?
But they've been prolonged already because nothing has actually happened. The strategy at the moment has been toothless. Now it's going to be mouthless because you've actually readmitted and given them the power to sit at an equal table with you when they don't recognize the values that you stand for. But I mean, I think the tragedy, the bigger tragedy here is the fact that the African National Congress has actually lost influence in the continent.
How
I think,
so?
I mean, they were unable to lobby against Morocco. They were unable to bring the entire continent against a decision that they took, that the African Union ultimately took. I mean, 39 countries.
Out of 54?
That just shows you the ANC has lost influence in the continent. The ANC used to be, as the oldest liberation movement in the continent, it used to be very influential. It held a moral high ground. Actually, maybe about 18 months ago, if we all recall, President Mbeki was on the record to have said, people across the continent don't take the leadership of this country seriously anymore. You can replay it. And it's not only that. I mean, the job of the current Minister of International Relations as well, it should bring a serious question to what is she doing, losing a type of a vote of so significant proportions to the rest of the 39 countries. It shows that they've lost influence in the continent.
Winston Churchill said, united we stand, divided we fall. As Africa, shouldn't we unite in order to resolve these African issues on our own soil? I
mean, you are divided because this is false unity. Unity has to be on the basis of values and principles. There's no reason for, I mean, this Steve Biko called it, we sit over the table and have tea and biscuits and we think that might push liberation with people who don't recognize us as human beings. So Morocco doesn't recognize, to not recognize Western Sahara's self-determination rights is not to recognize them as human beings, because the very first duty of unity in the continent has to be over the principle of self-determination and decolonization. And Morocco is at the moment in a colonial occupation in Western Sahara. So if they are inside the fold, it's as false because it's an offense to the values that you represent.
Now, the EFF is calling on social movements across the continent and around the globe and the diaspora to isolate the government of Morocco through boycotts, disinvestments, as well as sanctions that you called for earlier. How are you going to manage that?
Look, that's how the minister was, the deputy minister was on the aspect that you just played now, and she says, because we are sympathetic because we used to be in that position. What did we do when we were in that position? Not only did we ask the continental bodies to isolate the apartheid state, we asked them to boycott. We asked them to end diplomatic. We asked them to end business interest or economic ties as well as sports. Apartheid was isolated. That's what should be happening. You shouldn't just say, Morocco, we recognize its right of existence, but we don't agree with its occupation of Western Sahara and it must not be part of the continental body. You must actually isolate it. It means that you must recall your mission from Morocco. Your diplomatic mission in Morocco must be recalled. If you really regret this decision, you must actually recall the ambassador of South Africa to Morocco. He must come back and be here at home, and you institute more, you mount and lead a campaign of the isolation of Morocco until the referendum is implemented, and it's implemented on the terms that the Saharan people have said. And that means every citizen of Morocco doesn't participate. And that's how we're going to arrive at a solution where you're actually going to find that the people who are living there in most of the cases for the past many years in a situation of without equal rights, without the rights of self-determination, they're going to say they don't want to be part of Morocco.
In conclusion, Mr. Ndlozi, how do you think as the EFF this should have been resolved in the first place?
Look, the reality is the African Union should have not admitted Morocco. The condition should have always been a respect of the borders, as the founding statutes say. But beyond that, I think that they should have mounted that rejection with a lot more, and that is boycotts, divestments, and sanctions, to isolate it completely, to isolate Morocco completely and not be in any association with them. That would have fast-tracked the process. I mean, as soon as the UN took a resolution in 76 and the rest of the world in 84 isolated South Africa through disinvestments, by 1990, apartheid was negotiating with the ANC. That was like in a space of 6-5 years. So you've got to be, that's what works. It works better than bullets and guns and bombs. So we've got to implement boycotts, divestment, and sanctions in the international isolation of Morocco. That's what will bring the solution. That's what the African Union should have done.
Mr. Ndlozi, I got a lot more questions, but unfortunately, time is not on our side. Thank you so much for joining us here in studio. That was the EFF National spokesperson, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back after that.
News Today provide news updates giving a wealth of knowledge, breaking stories and crossing live for you.